welcome back to the TorontoWebsiteDeveloper.com. I am Peter Worski, the Toronto website developer specializing in Drupal. And in this 6th video tutorial of our 10-part video tutorial series on module development for Drupal 7, I want to show you how we can pull results from the database using SQL statements, specifically the select statement. So in the previous video tutorials, we were looking at some SQL statements, and we were inserting into our different tables, and we also actually created tables using our install file. But now we can actually pull information out of the database, and I'm going to show you how we can do that. Quick side note, in the previous video tutorial, I told you we would do theming in this video tutorial as well. However, this tutorial on pulling information is going to be pretty in-depth, and so I'm going to do the theming in the next video tutorial. So check that one out if you already know how to pull information from the Drupal database. Again, that said, I'm over at TorontoWebsiteDeveloper.com/store. Here you can purchase the series once it becomes available. All of my others, with the exception of the PHP series, are available here for purchase. They're $20. The more you buy, the more you save. Again, I hugely appreciate all sales. They go to help me continue to develop these and provide them at no cost on YouTube for those that can't afford them. And if you're in that situation but you'd like to help out, please just give me a thumbs up, leave a comment on YouTube, let me know how these video tutorials are helping you. You could even go further and share the video tutorial with friends, post it on your site if you have one. Greatly appreciate all of that as well. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I do track that, and it helps me make sure that I'm on point and providing information that people need. That said, why don't we get back to where we left off last time? So over at my local host here, I'm going to be moving quickly, so hopefully it's not too fast. But I'm at admin/structure/flags/flag application. This is the page we created last time using hook menu, but we didn't actually return anything out of that function. So if I go back over to my code here, you'll see that I'm in my admin.inc file, which we created. We told through hook menu to look at this file. And I've done two things that are a little bit different from the previous tutorial. I've created a form array, and I'm returning that array. And that's because this function that we created, when we use Drupal get form, it looks for a form to be returned. And so I just wanted to avoid errors. That said, I'm going to go over to drupal.org/developing/API/database. In Drupal 7, what was introduced was this database API. Essentially, what it did was the database API is kind of went object-oriented, and so it's an abstraction layer between for Drupal, so that you can use Drupal with different databases without having to do any type of different coding. And using the database API and the object-oriented, it looks like it relies on kind of the PDO objects that are provided by PHP 5. So that might not mean anything to you. Don't worry about it. It's just a little bit of background. The one caveat to this, if you haven't watched my PHP video tutorial number 10 in the series there on object-oriented programming, you might want to check that out first, because a lot of what we're going to be doing is object-oriented. Now, this book on the database API provides a lot of useful information. We're specifically going to be looking at the dynamic queries here. And that's because we're going to be building our query, and we're going to be adding a whole bunch of different things to it. And so that's why it's dynamic. The static is just kind of your one-off, easy to do query, whereas this one might be a little bit tougher. Now, first thing we need to do is we can scroll down and we can see, like, here's a good example of like select, right? This is what we're going to be using, DB select. This is to get information out of the database. So what I want to do is scroll down here, and I want to think about what is it that I need. I'm going to need fields. I'm going to need to join multiple tables together. And there's probably a couple other things, specifically extenders. So let's take a look at our database and try to figure out what it is we're going to be pulling out. We know we created the flag application table, and what this holds is the status and the flagging API. And the reason why that's so sparse is because we did not want to duplicate information in our database. We know that the flagging table actually holds a lot of the information about the flag itself, specifically what was flagged and the user and the time that it was flagged. So we didn't need to put that in our table. But obviously we need to pair those two up if we're going to pull information out about the flag. Additionally, we're going to want to provide the title of the node that was flagged, and that title is actually provided in the node table, and it's linked to through the entity ID here, right? We know that entities in Drupal 7 are these kind of different concepts, and there are a number of different things like the entities, but nodes are entities as well as users. So entity ID is referring to what was flagged. This is the node ID, and then we want to get the user ID, and so we actually want to get their name rather than user ID, and so we're going to pull in a join to the user table. So let's go over to the documentation here, and let's look at what joins typically will look like as written. And so you can read up on the information here, and you can see that you can actually use join, inner join, left join, or right joins. We're just going to use the standard join. And there's a nice example here of a query. And so what we'll do is we'll actually work off of this. I'm just going to paste in code, but if you were doing your own, you could just grab this and use it as a template and then amend it yourself. So let's go back over to our page here, and I'm just going to type in two different pieces first. And actually, I have to erase something when I paste this in. So just bear with me. I'm going to remove this page with default because I'm going to explain it to you later. So let's save this. I'm going to walk you through specifically what we're doing here. I've got a database select, so that's what we just saw, what we talked about. And when you do this, when you call this method, you're going to actually pass in a database table, and then you're going to pass in an alias. So what I'm doing is I'm originally selecting from the database table flag application, and that's because that's what I want to pull from. I want all the results to be associated with that. So if there's no result in that table, there's going to be nothing that's pulled. Additionally, we're not going to pull additional information if there's no flag application that's associated with that information. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to join a table up. So just like we saw, similar to DB select, the join method takes a table name. So this is going to be flagging. It takes an alias, f, and then it takes how they're actually joined together in a string. So f.flaggingID is equal to fa.flaggingID. And if we look at our database to understand kind of what that means and what's going on, if we go to flagging, we can see that flagging ID here, and we go to flag application, flagging ID is the same thing. So that's how those two tables are joined together. So that's what we're doing in our code. So with that said, I'm going to copy in two other SQL statements here that I don't think I really need to explain, but I'll just let you know that here we're actually joining the node table, and so the entity ID, what we talked about, is equal to node ID, and then we're going to join the users table, provided with the alias u, and the flag ID UID is equal to the user UID. So we've got all our tables joined up together. We can go ahead and save that. Now what we need to do is figure out how do we actually get fields. Again, handy documentation here. We're going to go back and we're going to look at the fields. And so you can see that you can add one-off fields here with this method add field. But really what we want to do is we want to be able to use this shorthand fields. So we're going to copy this here. And I'm going to go back to my code here. And I'm going to paste this in. Now, this is where it might get a little bit confusing, a little bit weird. I've been using SQL, so I'm going to do that as well. But with the database abstraction API, what you can do is actually chain these different methods together, right? So when you're using fields, you can chain them all together. So rather than have a semicolon at the end here, I'm going to actually have a bunch of them listed together along with other methods that are going to be called as well that I'm going to explain to you. The reason why you can't do that with join is because join can't actually be chained together. I know this might be a little bit weird, but just trust me on it. Don't worry about it. You can read about it on the join documentation page. But that's why you're going to see this like this, and you're going to see these like this. And if you look through other Drupal code, like I suggested in the previous video tutorial, looking at the node, you're going to see this a lot. And even the documentation is going to talk to you about it as well. So here, let me walk you through this. We're calling the fields method. We're passing in a table, so the alias n, and then we're passing an array of what we actually want to go ahead and grab. So we're going to grab the NID out of the node table, the title, the created, the UID, which doesn't seem right because that's the old documentation. So sorry, that was from what we pulled off of the site. We're going to start with the flag application table. We're going to grab the status from the flag table, or flagging table. We're going to grab the entity ID, the timestamp, and the flagging ID. And then from the node table, we're going to grab the title. From the user table, we're going to grab the user's name and their user ID. And then what we have to do is we have to figure out how do we actually execute this. So let's go back over to the documentation. And we can step back up here. And I think if we go back up one more, I think if you go to results, where is it? You'll find it somewhere around here. You find the actual execution. I think you can get it in database dynamic. If we go down to, here we go. So executing the query, this is in dynamic. You'll see once the query is built. So that's what we were doing with all of those methods. What we have to do is call execute. And so we're going to grab this line of code here. We're going to go back over to ours. And as a new line, we're going to step back and we're going to go, I actually like to call this results because that's what we're getting, results. And we're going to pass in SQL here. and we're going to call the method execute. And what this will do is it will return all the results from our query, and they'll be captured by the results variable. So why don't we go ahead and save that. And now I'm going to go back over to my page here. I'm going to reload this and just make sure I get no errors. So there's nothing there. That's good. But now let's conceptually think about this for a second. If this were a live site and I was using flag application, I potentially could have 1,000,000 flags here. And what this would do is return every single flag. There's no limit to it. And it'd be in all this weird different order. So I need two different things here. I need to be able to order these, and I need to be able to limit how I'm doing that. So let's first try to figure out the order. Go back to dynamic, and I can go to ordering here. And here we go, order by. And I can pass in what I'm going to be ordering by, the field, and then how that is to happen, ascending or descending. So going back to my code, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to grab a line here, and I'm going to paste that in, remove the semicolon there, add the semicolon here. And now I have an order by. I'm going to order by the timestamp. I'm going to do it descending. And so that takes care of one. We can order them. But what happens if we have 1,000,000 flags? This is where you have two different options. The first option, which is not going to work, but I wanted to show you about it, is you can use the range. And so range and limits. If you're going to actually pull in, say, a result of 10, you just want to show 10, the most recent 10, you can use 0 to 10, 0 to 20, or if you wanted to offset it, you could do that as well. But that doesn't really help us. What we want is we want to pull in 25 and have a pager at the bottom. You do that by going back, and you're going to go to extenders. And so extenders talks about the pager default, and so that's what we are going to actually use. And you'll see in the code somewhere down here, you can actually provide a limit. It's mentioned in this documentation. I won't actually walk you through specifically that. But what I want to do is I want to grab this extend. And so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back over to my code. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add extend pager default. And so now this is going to be a pager default query, so that's good. I can save that. And here, under the order by, I can actually add limit rather than a range. And so I'm going to add limit, and you add a number that you're going to limit by, so that's 25. Save that. I'm going to go back over to my page. I'm going to reload, make sure I got no errors. Do have no errors, so that's perfect. So now I'm just going to paste in a bunch of code, and what this code is going to do is it's actually going to run through the actual results and paste them out. And so this is not what we want to do, so I'm not really going to walk you through what we're doing or why we're doing it, but just know that I'm going through all the results as a single result, and then I'm printing out all the attributes, adding that as a simple text file, and then adding it back into my form, which gets rendered. Again, don't worry about this because this is not the way to actually do things, and that's what we're going to do in the next video tutorial. But here are my results. You'll see that the queries work. We get our information. It looks ugly. It's all in one line of text. And so what we need to do is we need to theme this and provide this into a nice user-friendly table. And so we do that using a theme function built into Drupal, theme table. So in the next video tutorial, I'll show you how we do that to actually theme our output. And so that will wrap this up. But before I go, again, please leave me a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know if this helped you. And if you have any questions, please post them. I'll try to get back to you. But until the next video tutorial, thanks very much for watching.